everyone. Thanks for coming tonight on this very hot evening. I'm Shannon Taggart. I was, before the Mormon Anatomy Museum closed, I was a programmer in residence, and the last program that I had scheduled was one on Satanism with Massimo Introvigne, a sociologist from Torino who wrote an epic 600-page history of social history of Satanism. And part of that, we were going to do 3 talks, and this was the one I was the most excited about, because I asked Massimo to create something about black metal and Satanism, and he graciously did, including lots of sound clips and video. And I'm just really excited that we're able to present it, even though the museum is now closed, here at Ronnie's studio. And thanks for co-producing this, Ronnie. We really appreciate it. And Massimo is the author of 60 books on religion and sociology, and he's an epic resource, and I'm sure the Q&A is going to be really fascinating. So thank you, everyone, for coming.
So thank you, Ronnie, for having me here, and Shannon for the program, and everybody for listening. First, a disclaimer: I'm not a musician, and I'm not a musicologist. Musicians and musicologists are those who make some money about this stuff. Sociologists who just observe normally don't make any money, but they have their part of fun. So. Now this clip is about a very sad story. On November 13, 2015, terrorists attacked the Bataclan Theatre in Paris and killed 89 people. These people were attending a concert by a group called the Eagles of Death Metal, and one of their songs was called Kiss the Devil. We just played it, and it proclaimed, I will love the devil. In fact, there was a huge misunderstanding. We read in both Christian evangelical websites, Muslim websites, that Satanists just got their due. But in fact, the Eagles of Death Metal are not Satanists, and they are not even a death metal band. The name came as a joke. Somebody told them, you are like the Eagles of Death Metal, and they kept the name. They are really a rock band. They are not a metal band, but of course this incident was the opportunity for more international attention on the connection between metal, or perhaps rock music in general, and Satanism. And that's an old story. Now, those of my generation, which I may well be the only one in this room, would remember this song by the Rolling Stones. 1968 was an important year of the culmination of the 60s, and it was called Sympathy for the Devil. So even groups with nothing to do with metal and really nothing to do with connections with really satanic group were more or less talking about the figure of the devil back in the 60s, and In the book by Peter Bebergal, it's even argued that mentioning Satan was a way of getting interest and revitalize a scene which was not in very good shape. Now, yeah, that's something different. More or less in the same years, when the Rolling Stones were singing Sympathy for the Devil, we witnessed the birth of something different. People went around dressed in black with a lot of tattoos, a lot of piercing, and called themselves Gothic, the Gothic milieu. One of the first Gothic band was not metal, was actually psychedelic rock, was the Coven, and the Coven was a band founded in Chicago in 1967, and this is the first band who tried to connect with Anton LaVey's Church of Satan. Some of you were here last time, some months ago, and I discussed the difference between rationalist Satanist groups such as Anton LaVey's Church of Satan, occult Satanic group, and some of these early bands tried to contact the Church of Satan, which was in the meantime becoming famous in the media.
Satan! Satan! Beelzebub! Beelzebub! Leviathan! Leviathan! Asmodeus! Asmodeus! Abaddon! Abaddon!
Here we have the end of the first album of Coven, Witchcraft Destroys Minds and Reaps Souls, and it ends with a Black Mass, but this Black Mass, one can argue, is largely derived from popular novels, Dennis Wedley, and not particularly with any existing satanic group. That was totally a favorite when I was a teenager, so that shows how antique I am. And I did own this album, High Tide. High Tide and Black Widow were progressive rock groups, so still nothing to do with metal, but high quality, I would say, progressive rock groups. And I mentioned them because they befriended people in the occult milieu. For the Black Widow it was Alexander's, the self-proclaimed king of the witches. For the High Tide it was the Aleister Crowley milieu. So they started being musicians who were not only mentioning the occult as a publicity stunt, but they really had some connection with the occult milieu, which was true even in Italy.
Magister Dixit. Magister Dixit. Magister Dixit. Magister Dixit.
This is an Italian progressive rock group called Iacula. And Iacula was actually a long-lasting pornographic comic about vampires, Dracula from Ejaculation and Dracula. I was offered once the full run. I was quite reluctant to buy by a truck driver from central Italy, but introduced him to Gordon Melton, who was the largest collection in the world of vampire stuff. So now the only full collection of Dracula in the world is owned by Gordon Melton. It's difficult to have a full collection because the police seized it quite often. We are talking of the 60s. Yeah.
On what part was the comic, the porno comic? Was it like pulp comics in Italy, or was it from somewhere else?
No, it was Italian.
It was Italian.
Italy had the vague of porn horror.
Oh yeah, sure. I had Dylan Dog.
Zora and the Dracula. Dracula was not very sedate, so the police sometimes really taking it away. And this group, even the cover is similar to the cover, that's the cover of an album, it's similar to the covers of the comic, but they developed a number of themes, vampires, occult, demons. Now, let's go to metal. Metal, of course, there are as many definitions of metal as books on metal, but metal or heavy metal is heavy drums, a certain distorted sound of guitars, and extreme metal is the most transgressive part of metal. There will be corpse paint, people will paint themselves very much in white like ghosts, or vampires, but with some blood dripping. There will be screams, growls, sometimes mutilations with blades on scene. And then there is a classification into subgenres: speed metal, thrash metal, doom metal, death metal, black metal. And these genres are different, but to tell exactly the difference is not very easy, even for specialists. Now here you can appreciate the difference in sound from the Rolling Stones, and it's also very moderate with respect with what will come later, but the Black Sabbath were credited with being the first black metal group, and the year is 68, which is the same year of Sympathy for the Devil by the Rolling Stones. And the Black Sabbath played with Satan and Satan, but they were not Satanists. Now we know some of them were very good Catholic, active Catholics actually. So they were not Satanists, but they were playing with this imagery. Here we are at thrash metal, Slayer, one of the first well-known, there were others before, extreme metal group in US. And it was all about Satanism, but this Satanism was seen Satanism. It was more for provocation than a real exploration of Satanism as a religion. Now you would say this is black metal, but it's not. It's death metal. Death metal, in a way, was always regarded as less satanic than black metal, but there were exceptions. This group, Deicide, had a singer, Glenn Benton, whom Per Faxneld, who is a scholar of Satanism and metal in Sweden, calls the most fanatically Satanist singer he ever came across. So, we can say that death metal was less into Satanism than black metal, but some groups were close to black metal in sound and also quite close to black metal in ideology. Now this is a short piece of Venom. Venom is the British band, and we are now in the beginning of the 80s, which is credited with really creating black metal. And to elaborate a Satanist ideology, one of the members of Venom said, we switched from talking about Satan in the third person to go into the first person. I'm Satan, I'm a Satanist, I want to tell you about my experiences. However, their Satanism was rationalist Satanism, but the Satanism of Anton LaVey. For those who remember the last lecture I had here, LaVey didn't really believe Satan was a person. For him, Satan is the symbol of our higher anti-religious, libertine, liberated self. And it's not really a person you can deal with. Now, speaking of contacts with LaVey, this is probably the most important instance. King Diamond was the singer of Mercyful Fate, a Danish singer, and he became initiated into the Church of Satan, a friend of LaVey, wrote a lot of his experiences with LaVey, but we are still dealing with LaVeyan Satanism, which is in a way different from occult Satanism. Now this is Bathory, one of the great names of the first wave of black metal. Bathory, the name is sinister enough. They took it from Countess Elizabeth Bathory, who was a real character, and she killed hundreds of girls in order to take baths in their blood to remain eternally youth and beautiful. We don't know if she really succeeded, but she was caught and arrested and jailed for life. But apart from the reference to Countess Bathory, Bathory, the musical group, surely had connections with Satanism, but it seems they were more stage antics, and they never, unlike King Diamond for instance, they never had contact with any of the real life Satanist organizations. were traveling through the pioneers, really, of black metal. Another one was Hellhammer, changed the name in Celtic Frost. That was a Swiss group founded by Tom Gabriel Fischer. And they were very much influenced by a painter, Hans Giger. He's a good painter. There is a museum named after him in Switzerland. And Giger gave sort of a Jungian interpretation of Satanism. He didn't really believe in the devil. And there is a little story about it. When I published Satanism, a Social History, I wanted to put Baphomet by Giger in the cover, particularly because my first big book, The Magician's Hat, back 30 years ago, had another Giger in the cover. So I would have come full round. But the heirs of Giger say no, because Giger had nothing to do with real Satanism. You know, it was the shadow of Jung, so we switched to a modern rendition of Giger by contemporary American artist. Now, Hellhammer and Celtic Frost were in touch with Giger. They regarded Giger as their sort of a mentor. And they were very young when they were 16, 17 years old. But at the same time, they were also in contact with the Swiss branch of the Church of Satan of LaVey. Interesting aspect of black metal is soon became really global and even traveled in Eastern Europe before the fall of the wall and of the Soviet Empire. In Czech Republic, the Church of Satan really became known through the black metal group, and in Finland, Beherit became internationally famous. Now, Beherit was in touch with another satanic movement, not LaVey's Church of Satan, but the Order of the Left-Hand Path in New Zealand, which is also rationalist, I would say, but with some distinction. Now, this is an interesting slide about how far the globalization went, because on the left you see the cover of a DVD by Ugra Karma. Ugra Karma is Nepalese black metal, and of course in Nepal there is not the Christian devil, but they vituperate against local religion. So they took the devil of a symbol of global criticism of religion. But the clips on the right is even more interesting. Of course, you don't see the face of anybody singing for very good reasons, because it's a Saudi Arabian group called Al-Namrud, or the Unbelievers. And they sing the praises of the demons or the jinns, the spirits who do exist in the Muslim tradition, and criticize the Islamic establishment. And that's why they are very much anonymous. Nobody knows who they are, and they distribute their music through servers in the West. So if really the local religious police would like to know who they are, probably they could. So one urban legend, or perhaps more than a urban legend, is they are princes or members of the royal family, so nobody really bothers them. more about globalization. This is the trailer of a movie, Légions de Satan, or The Angels of Satan, was the most watched movie in Moroccan theaters in 2007. And it's the story of the attempt by the Moroccan police to destroy the black metal movement as heretic by arresting 14 musicians. But what happened was that thousands of young people took to the street to protest and to demand the release of the musicians, and the king himself was afraid that this movement would become politicized and perhaps would start an anti-government revolution, decided to pardon the musicians. And in the same year there was a repression in Iran, and the musicians were less lucky. They really went to jail for long terms. But in Morocco, notwithstanding the accusation of Satanism, the pressure of the young people basically stopped the repression. And the movie of 2007 still maintains some stereotypes about Metaliens, as they are called in French-speaking Northern Africa, but tells the story as it is, of how a popular juvenile revolution preventing these people from staying. Now we go to the most important part from my point of view. Again, I'm not a musicologist, so I'm more interested in the ideology, and it's the so-called second wave of black metal. Some call it Norwegian black metal, even if it's not only Norwegian. Now these people hated LaVey with a vengeance, because LaVey wants you to become a Satanist to become happy. So you will become happy because you will free yourself of Christianity or Judaism. LaVey was Jew himself, which with the idea of sin, of penitence, prevents you from enjoying the only three important parts of life, which are money, power and sex. But you should be happy. So he presented Satanism as a religion of good, as a good religion, and Satan as a good guy. Now here is Varg Vikernes, who is one of the two big names of Norwegian black metal, and he says that the so-called the Church of Satan, that's LaVey, it's not a Church of Satan, because it's humanistic organization which worships happiness and life, while I worship death, evil, and all darkness. In other words, that's very important for the history of Satanism, because Satanism as adoration of evil, of death, or whatever is black and bad, doesn't really exist except in the fantasies of fundamentalist Christians. But these fantasies came true in Norwegian black metal, because these guys invented what was later called in Sweden, by the way, Anticosmic Satanism. So for them, worshiping Satan is, as they said, hating everybody. We hate everybody, we even hate ourselves. So many of them either tried to go in jail for long term by committing homicides or committed suicide, because they hated everybody, including themselves. That's the black metal, satanic black metal, that's the most typical. And you see in the right Euronymous. Euronymous died in 93, he was, by the way, killed by Varg Vikernes, who is the guy of the previous slide. They had some discussion, and in this milieu discussions are normally solved by killing each other. But not unlike in some fundamentalist Christian communities in rural America. So there are very different groups who would solve their differences in the same way. And here is another quote by Euronymous. I believe in a horned devil, a personified Satan. All other forms of Satanism are bullshit. And that's again against LaVey. Say we don't care for Satanism where Satan is a metaphor, is an image, is a symbol of the higher self. No, no, no. We want to worship the bad guy of the Bible. And we want to worship him because he's bad. And so for them, Satan is the god of evil and darkness. He's not the liberator of men and women. He is really the bad guy, and they want to worship him as the bad guy. The sound Euronymous tried to create was really the sound of the noise of the devils in hell, and Helvete, that's hell in Norwegian, was the music store where these people congregated. And Euronymous, Mayhem was the name of his musical group, and these friends really tried to define black metal as the music of real Satanists, which were not LaVey Satanists. Euronymous wrote, if a band cultivates and worships Satan, it's black metal. If musicians are not Satanists, there is no black metal band. Black metal has nothing to do with the music itself, it's the lyrics, and they must be satanic. Now, that's not the opinion of all black metal musicians, but it was the opinion of Euronymous, who was quite authoritative, so to speak, in this milieu.
When it's cold and when it's dark, the freezing moon can obsess you.
That's the voice of Per Olin, better known as Dead. And Dead was really dead at age 22 because he committed suicide. First he cut himself, but if it was not enough, he also shot himself in the head and the brain went out. So the urban legend is that when Euronymous arrived, he ate the brain of his friend, but surely he took some quite gruesome pictures which were later used for a bootleg. A bootleg is a non-official recording of a performance of the Mayhem Euronymous group.
Ja, alla de här ryktena om foton på hans lik och de här, ska det ha varit likdelar som har...
That's an interview. Say, are true these rumors that you ate the brain of your friend? And the answer, we refuse to comment on details, but let's just make clear, we are not normal people. It isn't every day that you get to see a corpse, so you have to do the most out of it. But I believe that the nice line is you have to understand we are not normal people. So don't judge us with the standards of normal people. is again our friend Dead, and he was the one most credited for cutting himself and ending up every concert with a lot of blood coming from him. Of course, this was not completely unknown in artistic performances. Hermann Nietzsche was cutting the models on stage and painting with her blood. But Per Facknell interviewed a number of black metal musicians of this time, and now, as we will see, things are perhaps a little bit different. But at this time, he believes it was really a religious ritual. They were offering their blood to Satan, and it was not simply artistic performance. So there is a difference between Nietzsche and art with the blood and what Dead was doing. This is a sad story because one of the ideas in black metal Norwegian, they should pass to the action. Say, okay, we sing, but only singing is not enough. We should prove we are real Satanists. Satanists are against the Christian God. So what they started doing was to burn the medieval wooden churches. It was a wonderful part of Norwegian cultural and Christian heritage, and between 92 and 96 they burned 50 Christian medieval churches in Norway, and that's a loss which will never be recovered. As I said, they wanted to pass to action. So some people burned churches, some people killed other people. Normally, this culture was quite homophobic. So they killed homosexuals selected at random in the street. But Vikernes killed, here you see him in court, killed Euronymous, so the one superstar of the black metal Norwegian scene. In 93 killed the other one, and he stayed for 16 years in jail. So the situation was that the two main stars largely created and defined Norwegian black metal disappeared because one was killed, one was in jail. But number one, Vikernes was a Norwegian jail, not to be confused with American jail. So he had a very good time, but he even had a recording studio with state-of-the-art instruments and possibilities of communicating. So it's Norwegian jail. Scandinavian jails are very peculiar. And number two, there were a number of younger groups. We just heard Dark Throne, but there were all Gehenna, Thraldom, Emperor, which continued the tradition of a satanic Norwegian black metal. In 92, the years of the murder of Euronymous Infernus, that's a nice name, Roger Tiggs, found in Gorgoroth. And Gorgoroth was a heavily satanic group, and this incident is very famous. In 2004, they went to Krakow, they did what was called the Satanic Mass of Krakow. On stage, they decapitated and impaled the head of a sheep, they crucified naked models, and they sang the praise of Satan. Now, you have to consider that in 2004, that was the city of Pope John Paul II, where pilgrims gathered because it was the city of the beloved Polish Pope. And so they were arrested, expelled from Poland, because it was a big scandal, which is probably exactly what they wanted. Now, Gorgoroth didn't kill anybody. They only went to jail for killing sheep, but they didn't kill human beings. And so they were criticized by saying, you don't pass to action. You only talk about Satanism, but you don't do anything really satanic. And certain other group created a trademark, true Norwegian black metal. And they didn't allow Gorgoroth to use this trademark, but only other groups. But even some of the groups, like Take was the group owning the trademark, they were also accused of talking a lot and not passing to action either. That state. From the point of view of a scholar of new religious movement, this is really a feast, because Les Légions Noires was a group or a constellation of groups who not only were very secretive, but in France tried to create an experiment of Satanist communal living in a black forest, which lasted for 2 years. And they insisted in not circulating their music. They only gave by hands to friends. Some of those, there are rumors, we still don't know whether they are true, but some of those who put on the internet their music were killed. And still historians of black metal have figured out perhaps one name, and all the others we know the stage name in a strange language they created, but we don't know who they are, we don't know where they are now, because the group was extremely secretive and quite violent when somebody tried to ascertain who they really are, or to sell their music for money, which they didn't want. Now, if you want to make something provocative, you will say that you declare yourself a Nazi and start inhaling Adolf Hitler. And that was, after the fall of the wall in Poland, what some black metal musicians in former communist countries started doing. They created NSBM, National Socialist Black Metal, but they were immediately attacked by the Norwegians as too moderate. They say Hitler was a good guy, because Hitler only hated the Aryans, but he would not kill the Germans, he would only kill the Jews. Hated the Jews, but not the Aryans. So he will kill only the Jew, but what about killing the Germans too? The women and children and beautiful passers-by in Germany. You should hate everybody. So if you are a Nazi, you say they are just vitalistic, nice, life-affirming group, and not really hating everybody, because you hate only somebody, but not everybody. Out of these controversies, however, one group of very high quality, Behemoth, emerged in Poland, which became very famous because their singer became the boyfriend of the most sugary bimbo pop singer in Poland, and it didn't last, but he became sick with leukemia. She was with him, so it became a very romantic story, despite the fact that they were burning Bible and doing other things not very popular, including her. She persuaded her to become aggressively anti-Catholic. Now, some scholars will say that in the 21st century, black metal is no longer Satanist. It switched to neo-Paganism or Celtic religion, but there are still groups which are Satanist, like Marduk in Sweden. Marduk Daniel Rosten in the 21st century, he wrote, if it's not about devil worship or destructive Satan, not destructive, we hate everybody, you couldn't really call it black metal. Yes, there was still a lot of Satanism in 21st century metal, and not only black metal. This is perhaps the most important case of connection between real Satanism and stage Satanism, and it's a Swedish group called Dissection. We heard its leader, John Northwaite, and it's unclear, it's an egg and chicken story. Who founded what, but Northwaite and Dissection were very closer to a new satanic organization called the Misanthropic Luciferian Order, and later the Temple of the Black Light. Again, misanthropic, we hate everybody. Now, the anti-cosmic Satanists, they hate everybody, but they hate homosexuals more than anybody else. So, in '97, at the very beginning of the activities of Dissection and MLO, the Misanthropic Luciferian Order, they decided to kill a randomly selected homosexual in Keller's Park in Göteborg, and a movie was done about this homicide. Of course, they killed somebody who was both an Algerian immigrant. Not all this group are Nazi, but surely they are all extremely right-wing. So they killed an Algerian immigrant who was also gay, so it was the perfect victim. They were sent to jail for 10 years, and the movie about the tragedy was released in 2006. That's the poster of the movie. As soon as he was released from jail, Northway staged a very elaborate ritual suicide. He kept in front of him the Liberal Zerate. It's not a stupid book, and it was the sacred book of the misanthropic Luciferian order, candles, and he died slowly in a ritual enactment of a suicide, which, by the way, is an argument against those who say that, oh, it's just publicity for the music. It's not, because for making publicity to your music, you may do many things, perhaps even go to jail, but not organize a ritual suicide and die, or not very deep. Now, a very interesting phenomenon which happened in Sweden and Norway is the Anticosmic Satanism, which is hate for humanity, for beauty, for goodness, was considered by the governments a national treasury. So groups like Latin, which maintains all the team, we hate everybody, but was actually subsidized by the government and also was invited to perform in national festival, opera houses. So we saw a real mainstreaming of black metal, which is regarded as Norwegian as the troll, and so you need to protect it as part of the national culture. In conclusion, Infernus of Gorgoroth claimed that Satanism is the most important part of black metal, and I also quote a Finnish Kai Puolakanaho, a Finnish musician, concordant, says the whole meaning of black metal is based upon death, destruction, and Satanism. It's a satanic death cult, a musical black mass. So some scholars really, like Benjamin Olson in Norway, have written that black metal is not a musical phenomenon, it's really a new religious movement. He interviewed participants to the conference, say, do you have fun? They say, absolutely not. Having fun is negative, because it will diffuse your tension of hating everybody. So you should not have fun, but you should have a mystical experience of union with Satan and reinforcing your hate for the world. But of course there are other who disagree and say that there are very good black metal bands who are not satanic. That's surely true. It's true when in the 21st century some bands moved from Satanism to neo-Paganism, as I say, or Celtic music. but I wouldn't conclude that all black metal made this transition, because there are still groups which are satanic today. Now, this is a short clip, but it shows the other tendency which is mainstreaming, because in 2015 the National Norwegian Opera organized a performance that put together the chorus of the National Opera, so girls very well dressed, boys in jacket and tie, and the black metal group Satyricon, and they put the two together playing the same music. Now, Satyricon, when was asked, but as you as Satanists participate in this, they say we never were Satanists, but it also depends on what Satanist means, because they also say we share a lot of ideologies with the Satanists, we want the dark powers, etc., etc. Perhaps we can see again, because you will notice the very conventional opera chorus together with a black metal band in the opera. See? So the relationship is very complicated, and before concluding I want to add a final caveat. If you go to Encyclopedia Metallum on the web, you see a list of black metal bands. There are more than 10,000. Some of them are no longer active. And the young people and not so young people who go to the concert of the black metal bands are in the millions. So they are not all Satanists. That's a stereotype by the fundamentalist Christians who will believe that any young people who likes this kind of music is a Satanist, sacrificing kittens to Satan, invoking the spirit of Hitler, which is only a part really of black metal. But I have friends who are everything from Catholic to communist to atheists who like to go to the black metal concert, because notwithstanding what they are told by the musicians that they will not have fun, they actually do have fun. That's the reason why they go to these concerts and events. And surely some of the musicians are commercial enough that they do nothing to not attract this kind of people. So we should be very careful as scholars not to spread the stereotype that every musician in the black metal tradition is a Satanist, even if some of them are, and surely not every young man or woman goes to listen to black metal concert is a Satanist. Actually, a very, very tiny percentage of those who go to the concerts are interested in Satanism. The great majority just interested in the music. However, that's not necessarily the case for the musicians themselves, and so we will have a final word from one of them.
You telling us what is the primary ideology or primary ideas that fuel Gorgoroth's music?
He has to think about it, or pretend he has to think, or what is the primary idea which fuels Gorgoroth? Satan. In the end it says Satan. And so thank you. Yes, of course. Don?
I was wondering if you could expand a little bit on what Beherit has been doing since he got out of prison, because he's gone. I know that he's been releasing more neo-pagan kind of albums.
Paul Cachet, yes. He took a French name, married a French girl, took a French name, moved to France, and it's more into neo-Paganism in fact. So under the new name, Paul Cachet, we are talking of Varg Vikernes, for those who didn't hear the question. He is producing a somewhat different kind of music. So after the jail experience, he is not really continuing the traditional Norwegian satanic music. That will be more Gorgoroth, the guy drinking wine we have just seen. I would say Gorgoroth, although it's controversial because again some old hands would say Gorgoroth are poseurs. None of them went to jail for any serious crime, etc. But I would say if we look at the lyrics and the kind of show they put on, Gorgoroth is the most satanic Norwegian black metal we can see after the demise of Varg and Mayhem of Euronymous. Yes?
So you quoted several musicians who said that it's not about the music, it's about the lyrics, that what makes something Satanist or whatever it was not about the musical form. So putting aside the early examples you gave in prog rock and so on, are you aware of music that is being made now that is satanic by that definition, but not like black metal in form?
Yes, I believe in my book I even quote some classical music which is done with references to Satanism and sometime with connection of the musicians with Satanism. So, but I don't believe, by the way, it's a valid, it was exaggeration, because Euronymous said if you are a Satanist and you really believe in Satan as God of death and destruction, the music you produce is black metal. That's not the case, because black metal is also about a particular sound. In other words, if some Satanist groups, LaVey did, but LaVey is another brand of Satanism. LaVey composed the music. If some of the occult satanic groups, they compose music in the style of classic music or pop music or perhaps Gregorian chant, to me it's not black metal because...
No, I wasn't... Black metal would be, it's got to be metal. But,
Black metal should be metal. And not all which is black is metal. So it should be really black metal. So, but Euronymous is a point of view. It says to have a real black metal you should have lyrics hailing Satan, but I would say, and you should also have a certain approach to sound in the extreme metal tradition.
Leading up to like the early stages of Satan being talked about in music, was there any like influence from punk into black metal?
Musically, yes, but musically, yes, but there were some, perhaps even in Italy, minor punk groups who had some references to Satanism, or via Aleister Crowley, or via Genesis P. Orridge. But in general, it's not in punk that we find the real connection with Satanism. It's some progressive music, industrial, and then we move to death metal and black metal.
I think the crossover you're looking at there is Venom, because that is like kind of transition out of like the punk scene, and when punk leads into the metal scene? I'd say Venom kind of covers that ground a little bit.
I believe it, and we can also mention Siouxsie and the Banshees. Of course, they were not
Leading in another direction.
not Satanist, but they created the Gothic culture together with many other groups. So the Gothic culture was a little bit the ground where these flowers were, or plants, they wouldn't like flowers, but these plants were rather born. So it's a complicated story. Joy Division, we cannot, in a genealogy how we got there.
I mean, how would you distinguish like the nihilism of punk from the evil worship maybe of Satanism? I mean, I guess evil worship is more positive in a sense. It's more, you're saying what you worship rather than worshiping nothing.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, but what I'm trying to say is that this ground was long prepared in rock music. That's Bebergal's book. It was ground long prepared in rock music, and then metal, particularly Satanic metal, came. However, what I tried to do today is to show the groups who really had some connections, either with LaVey, which for me it's Satanism, but it's a more sedate, rationalist Satanism, or some other groups like the Order of the Left-Hand Path, or created this new form of anti-cosmic Satanism, which for me is the real important point, is the anti-cosmic Satanism never existed except in the imagination of the enemies of Satanism, mostly fundamentalist Christian, because here what we had before Norwegian black metal, we had the real-life Satanists, and the real-life Satanist, LaVeyan, but also like Michael Aquino, the Temple of Set, they would say Satan is a good guy. And he has had a very bad press, because the Bible was written by the winners, but in reality, in the Garden of Eden, Satan tried to help humans to be more rational and more happy. And God or Jehovah was the dictator and with the one punish them when they wanted to be happy. So Satan, we worship Satan because it's the good guy. Symbolically, LaVey, or really the first Aquino, doesn't matter, but it's a good guy. That was the reality. Then the fundamentalist Christians or some police officers, they hear these people worship Satan, and they say, oh, these people should be criminal, because Satan means evil, death, destruction, crime, sin. So we had the real Satanism, and we had the mirror image of Satanism created by the anti-Satanist, mostly fundamentalist Christian, and some law enforcement officers. Now enter Euronymous and Varg Vikernes, and they create exactly what classical Satanism or LaVey or Aquino was not, but what the fundamentalist Christians were imagining. So people worshipping Satan because Satan is bad, not because it's good, and worshipping Satan because they want to worship hate, death, and destruction. That never existed before. And some even speculate that they really imitated the image of Satanism in Christian fundamentalist literature. I don't know, but surely they created something new for the first time on planet Earth, I would say, because all the previous instances of Satanism are people who worship Satan believing he can deliver something good, or he was good. For the first time, some people congregated to worship Satan because Satan is bad, because Satan represents hate, and we say we hate everybody. Hitler not good enough because he only hates Jews or non-Aryans. We hate and we also hate ourselves. Nietzsche not good enough, or white supremacist, or super capitalist a la Ayn Rand, who is a hero for LaVey, not good enough because you should hate everybody, including yourself. So in the end, you should even do something really stupid and go to jail, or you should commit suicide. And that's an ideology which really never existed before. And the most perfect system is dissection and the Luciferian misanthropic order, because they created their rituals, their holy book. And so we can say in Sweden, with dissection, misanthropic or anti-cosmic Satanism really exists as an organized movement, and that's an absolute novelty in the history of Satanism. Yes. Go on.
Sort of going back to punk existed sort of in reaction to what was going on societally around it. It was at least initially very, very political. Is there something going on in these countries that Satanism is reacting to? Is it born in anything like that, or is it its own creation?
Well, sure, if you consider that there are Satanist groups in Saudi Arabia. There was one well known in Iraq, but now they gave up. They moved to United States because it was too dangerous to stay in Iraq. Of course, they are protesting against a form of religious oppression. Now, many metal groups are anti-Christian, or almost all black metal groups are anti-Christian, but they have names like Rotten Christ, Impaled, Nazarene, Antichrist. So they protest against what they see as the excessive power of the Christian establishment. Although my comment is, in some countries this may become cliché, because the Christian establishment, like Scandinavia, doesn't have a lot of power, so they protest against an imaginary power. But if we take Behemoth, the Polish group, their protest against Christianity surely created problem with them in Poland, where still the Catholic Church has considerable power, and in the autobiography of the leader of Behemoth, which is a moving book because of his battle with being sick, he also tells the story that he decided they wanted to go to Kentucky. And in Kentucky they did a concert for old people where they started tearing and eating Bibles and shooting against the Bible, and they had to escape because, of course, in Kentucky they're not very popular. And more recently, one of the countries where they have a difficult time, so it's a real protest, is Russia. For instance, the Polish of Behemoth were expelled from Russia because the Orthodox Church didn't tolerate their anti-Christian songs. So now if you go to Russia and you start hailing the devil and criticizing Christianity, you probably go to jail. So surely there is a political element, which is the protest against the established religion, which can be Hinduism in Nepal with Yugra Karma, or can be Islam in Saudi Arabia, but most often is Christianity. And as I said, this anti-Christian protest in some countries is cliché, because the Christian establishment is a thing of the past, but in some countries may still be, or some parts of countries may still be very much real.
I was just surprised that the Norwegian metal bands the black metal bands were embraced as a national treasure. That's true. And so does this mean they're forgiven for destroying those beautiful churches? And is this general, or are there people who are against them being embraced and funded?
I believe the official narrative has adopted the point of view that they became neo-pagan, and Satanism was a sort of juvenile immaturity, but the story is much more complicated, and it's true that the groups which are more embraced, like in the opera performance, like Satirical, are basically neo-pagan group who try to tune down the Satanist element, even if they maintain a part of it. But I would say that the relation of Norway and Sweden and Finland with black metal is very complicated, because on the one hand, of course, there is an awareness that they burned churches, killed the homosexuals, so they were not exactly nice guys. But on the other hand, there is also the feeling that they placed these countries on the map of rock music. These countries were backyards. The epicenter of rock music, the real progressive, modern, new, was United States and UK. And now all of a sudden you have, for a certain genre, Scandinavia, or some countries in Scandinavia taking the lead. So the feeling is very much mixed. There is a certain pleasure in the fact that Scandinavia became so important in modern music, but there is also an awareness that they committed crimes. Something similar is also in Poland. You see the attitude to Polish black metal. Poland is where National Socialist black metal was created, so there is the Nazi connection. But on the other hand, groups like Behemoth, particularly when the singer and this affair with Doda, who is the national pop music sugary queen, they became more or less mainstreamed and accepted.
You say that from Satanism they transform themselves, or some of them, they transform themselves into neo-pagan.
Mm-hmm.
What content they put in this neo-pagan thing?
I believe the thread is, they would say that the most important element was the critique of Christianity. And the critique of Christianity, they say, when we were young people we didn't understand. We were waving the flag of Satan, say Satan is the enemy of Christianity, but that was perhaps wrong, because, and that's an old criticism of Satanism, they say Aleister Crowley or Wicca, would say, if you, for fighting Christianity, you start to say Hail Satan or Ave or Rege Satanas, you are already accepting the narrative of the Christian Bible. So you will lose. You should go completely outside of the Christian Bible and recover the religions which existed before Christianity. In Italy will be the Roman, in Greece the ancient Greeks and the gods of the Olympus, in Scandinavia Thor, or the Scandinavian mythology, in Britain the Celtic, but the Celtic pre-Christian mythology, etc. And that passage more or less also exists in the world of new religious movements. The criticism of Satanism, Aleister Crowley said the Satanists are inferior Christians. So he say they believe in the Bible, because from where do we know that there is a Satan? We know from the Bible. So you should go around the Bible and go back to the traditions which existed before the Bible came into the West. So go recover the Greek, the Roman, the Valhalla, etc. Okay, so.
Thank you.
Massimo, do you like the music?
And that's a question which is frequently asked. And I would say some of the music I like, but not the Norwegian black metal, the that's for my generation is a bit difficult to appreciate. But I would say that the first generation of metal or the music, it's a quality I can respect, and also this chain of passage between progressive rock and metal, these were among my favorite groups when I was a teenager. High Tide, Black Widow. This group I liked very much because the quality of the music was very high, and but the most recent black metal, I can understand the show, which is very spectacular, but Gorgoroth or Mayhem, I really, it's perhaps just showing that I'm old, but with respect to what was the music of my teenager years, it's I perceive more groaning and screaming and howling, but rather than a real musical theme. But that's perhaps only indicated I'm of another generation, so I don't want to pass judgment on those who like this music. Why not? I don't know if something will remain on the web. Will. People watching.
I don't know if you remember me, I met you at the museum on Joanna.
Oh yes, you are the soul of the museum.
I was, now the museum is over.